We want to bring you the original now with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And tonight, it's about something that may or may not be on your radar up north, a so-called super pig invasion.
We were told that nature has a balance, but these wild boars just broke every rule in the book. When a single operation wipes out years of breeding in seconds, it forces us to answer a chilling question. Did we create this monster, or has the wilderness finally decided to take the land back? This is not just a pig. It's a 300-pound high-intelligence juggernaut that's currently outsmarting the U.S. government. To really get why these boars are so hard to stop, we have to see how they're built from the inside out. Let's take a look at the raw power behind this relentless biological juggernaut. The biology of a biological juggernaut. Scientifically, they go by the name Sus scrofa, yet for farmers across the globe, they are a living nightmare that refuses to stop because this animal is a masterpiece of survival. While most people think of pigs as lazy farm animals, the wild version is incredibly sharp. Researchers often compare their intelligence to that of a 3-year-old child. They can solve puzzles, remember faces, and even learn from the mistakes of their peers. If a trap fails to catch one, that boar will probably never fall for the same trick again. These boars are very smart, and their level of awareness makes them one of the most difficult animals on Earth to outsmart. Now, combine that brain power with a reproductive system that functions at a terrifying speed. Farmers always refer to this as the 3-3-3 rule. This means that a female is pregnant for exactly 3 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days. Once she gives birth, she can have anywhere from 6 to 12 piglets in a single litter. She does this twice a year, every single year. It is a biological assembly line that never takes a break. And to make matters worse, these piglets do not stay young for long. A female can reach breeding age when she is only 6 months old. It creates a population curve that feels less like natural growth and more like a ticking clock. Because if you start the year with 2 pigs, you could realistically end it with dozens. Typically, survival is not about the numbers alone, it is about what they can handle. These animals are the ultimate generalists. They will definitely eat almost anything they find. One night, they might be rooting through a field of expensive corn or soybeans, and the next, they could be hunting down ground-nesting birds or even fawns. They have been known to eat carrion when food gets scarce. This flexible diet means they never starve. The boars also do not care about the weather. With thick, bristly coats and layers of fat, they can survive the freezing winters of the north, where they are known as super pigs. At the same time, they are perfectly comfortable in the humid, scorching heat of the southern states. Another layer of defense is their social lives. They live in groups called sounders, which are led by an older, experienced female. This lead matriarch is the one who keeps the group safe. She teaches the younger ones where to find food, and more importantly, how to avoid humans. And because of this constant pressure from hunters and farmers, these creatures have evolved to be ghosts. They used to be active during the day, yet they have shifted their entire lives to the night. They have become masters of stealth, moving through the shadows to stay invisible to the people trying to track them down. But their biology is only half the story. To understand why farmers are currently in a state of shock, we have to look back at how these animals were unleashed upon the landscape in the first place. De-invasion history. To fully grasp why things are so bad now, let's go way back to about 500 years ago. It all started in the 1500s when explorers like Hernando de Soto arrived in North America. They brought domestic pigs with them as a walking pantry. The idea was to let these pigs roam around, eat what they found, and provide a steady supply of meat for the soldiers. Everything was going fine until some of these pigs wandered off or were left behind when the explorers moved on. And this was the beginning of a massive change that nobody saw coming. You see, when a domestic pig enters the woods, something strange happens. It does not stay a pink, hairless animal for long. Within only a few generations, these animals go through a physical transformation known as reverting to a wild phenotype. They grow thick, coarse hair that can be black, brown, or even striped. Their snouts get tougher, and they start growing long, sharp tusks for defense. It is almost as if their DNA remembers how to be a wild beast the moment the barn door closes. They lose that farm pork look and become something much more dangerous in a surprisingly short amount of time. And by the early 90s, the situation took a turn for the worse. Wealthy estate owners wanted a more challenging hunt, so they imported pure Russian boars from Europe and Asia. These were not the farm pigs that had escaped centuries earlier. These particular kinds were aggressive, heavy-boned wild animals. Predictably, these new arrivals escaped their enclosures and started breeding with the feral pigs already in the woods. This crossbreeding created a hybrid often called a super pig. These hybrids were larger, smarter, and even more resilient than their ancestors. They had the survival skills of a wild boar and the high birth rates of a domestic pig. But originally, these animals were mostly found in the deep south of the United States. However, they did not stay put. They began a great migration that has now reached over 35 states, and this problem is not in America alone. Over in Europe, countries like Germany, Italy, and Poland are seeing their own populations explode. But when we look deep into it, there are two main reasons for this. Firstly, forests are becoming denser and more widespread. Secondly, the natural predators that used to keep pigs in check, such as wolves, have mostly disappeared from the landscape. So, without anything to hunt them, the boars essentially took over. While the pigs are good at moving on their own, humans also help them along. This happened through something called midnight trucking. Hunters who wanted to hunt boars closer to home would trap them in one state, put them in a trailer, and release them in a new territory in the middle of the night. This illegal movement of animals eventually caused a disaster across the country. What started as a small group of farm animals has turned into a global invasion that refuses to slow down. The seeds of this crisis were sown centuries ago, yet in the last 5 years, the financial cost of this invasion has reached a breaking point for the people who feed the world. What exactly happened next? The farmer's nightmare: economic devastation. For many farmers, it feels like they are waking up to a battlefield every morning. Think about spending months prepping your soil, planting expensive seeds, and watching your crops grow, only to walk out at sunrise and find the entire field turned upside down. Of course, this is not an exaggeration. It is real. Wild boars use their powerful snouts like living shovels. They do not eat just a few plants. They dig into the earth to find grubs and roots, flipping the soil and leaving behind massive craters. As these holes become deep and frequent, for a farmer, it feels like a double blow. Not only are the crops gone, the field is often too rough for a tractor to drive across without breaking an axle. Now, the scale of this destruction is hard to wrap your head around. Recent data from early 2026 shows that these animals are now causing over $2.5 billion in damage every single year in the United States alone. It is a massive financial drain that keeps getting worse just because they have a particular taste for high-value crops. A single group of boars, known as a sounder, can march into a field of corn, peanuts, or soybeans and wipe out 40 acres in one night. They eat what they want and stomp on the rest. For a family farm, that single night can represent their entire profit for the year vanishing into the dark. However, the damage goes beyond the plants. Ranchers are seeing a darker side of these animals as well. Wild boars are predators when they want to be. They frequently target young livestock like lambs, calves, and even goats. This adds a heavy layer of emotional and psychological stress for people who make their living raising animals. On top of that, these pigs are experts at destroying infrastructure. They undermine the banks of irrigation canals and farm ponds, causing them to leak or collapse. They also tear up farm roads and create erosion problems that take years to fix. Every time a farmer patches one hole, the boars seem to dig 3 more somewhere else. Perhaps the scariest part for the agricultural world is the threat of certain diseases. Specifically, everyone is watching for African swine fever. It is a highly contagious virus that is deadly to pigs. And if a single wild boar is found with this disease, it could instantly shut down the entire nation's pork export industry. This would mean billions more in losses and the potential collapse of thousands of businesses. Currently, the situation has reached a point where people realize they are no longer dealing with a nuisance. They are dealing with a full-blown economic crisis. But as the damage moved from annoying to catastrophic, the traditional man-with-a-rifle approach proved to be a drop in the bucket, leading to a technological arms race. The tech revolution, smart traps, and big hauls. For decades, the standard way to handle a wild pig was a simple box trap or a man with a rifle. While it worked for some time, these methods eventually backfired. One thing about box traps is that they usually caught 1 or 2 pigs, while the rest of the group watched from the safety of the brush. Remember we said earlier that these boars are smart? So the surviving animals learned exactly what a trap looked like and never went near one again. This created a generation of educated boars that were almost impossible to capture. And to get ahead of them, farmers had to stop thinking like hunters and start thinking like tech experts. This shift led to the invention of cellular gate systems. Companies like Jaeger Pro and Pigbrig changed the game by putting cameras on the traps. Now, a farmer does not have to sit in the woods all night. Instead, he gets a live video feed sent directly to his smartphone the moment a pig steps into the enclosure. He can be at the dinner table or even in bed while he monitors the situation in real time. This technology turned the tide because it removed the human element that often scared the pigs away. But the real secret to these new systems is a strategy called the whole sounder removal. It requires an incredible amount of patience and discipline. In the old days, you would pull the trigger the second you saw a pig. But with these smart traps, you definitely have to wait. You might watch 20 or 30 boars walk into the corral and start eating. Still, you'll have to wait until every single member of the family group is inside before you tap a button on your screen to drop the gate. In 2026, the tech has become even more advanced with the addition of artificial intelligence. These modern traps use image recognition to figure out exactly what is standing in the bait pile. If a deer or a neighbor's cow wanders into the circle, the AI knows not to trigger the alert. It only notifies the farmer when it identifies a wild boar. This prevents accidental catches and keeps the trap ready for the actual target. It is a level of precision that was science fiction only a few years ago. Also, farmers and professionals now use drones equipped with thermal optics to find where these animals hide during the day. These drones pick up heat signatures through thick trees, allowing people to place traps exactly where the boars are traveling. Even the bait has become high-tech. Scientists have developed pheromone-based lures and fermented corn recipes that smell so strong that the boars cannot resist them. These scents are designed to override the natural caution of the older, smarter pigs that usually stay in the shadows. These high-tech enclosures have led to massive catch events that were once thought impossible, overwhelming even experienced hunters with their scale. The massive catch. When you hit the button on your smartphone to drop that gate, you are not just closing a door. You are triggering a massive logistical operation. We are no longer talking about catching a few stray pigs here and there. In recent years, documented cases have shown that corral traps can capture 60, 80, or even 100 boars in a single drop. To see 100 wild animals, each weighing between 100 and 300 pounds, all trapped in one circle, is a sight that most people cannot even imagine. It is a sea of dark bristles, tusks, and raw power that shows the true scale of the problem. Once the gate is down, the real work begins. Managing a catch of this size is a grueling task that requires a lot of physical labor and a clear plan. With this, thousands of pounds of feral swine have to be humanely dispatched and removed from the site. It is a heavy, messy, and exhausting process that can take a team of people several hours to complete. This is the part of the job that does not make it into the media highlight reels. It is the hard reality of what it takes to protect a farm. Despite the hard work, there is no room for error. This is because of the whole sounder removal philosophy. Always bear in mind that if you leave even 1 or 2 pigs behind, you have basically failed. Those survivors are now educated. They have seen the trap work, they have heard the noise, and they will never step foot inside a corral again. Even worse is how they will teach their future piglets to stay away too. And to stop the population from exploding, the goal is to get every single one. Farmers who witness these massive catches often describe a strange mix of emotions. There is a huge sense of relief that the animals destroying their livelihood are gone, yet there is also a genuine sense of horror. Seeing 100 pigs in one spot makes them realize just how outnumbered they actually are. It is a wake-up call that shows how many animals are hiding in the shadows of their property every night. The traps themselves have to be engineering marvels to hold this much weight. When dozens of 200-pound animals realize they are cornered, the environment inside that fence becomes pure chaos. They slam into the walls and pile on top of each other with incredible force. If the trap is not built with heavy-duty steel or high-tensile netting, the boars will simply plow right through it. These massive catch events also provide a goldmine of information for scientists. Biologists often arrive at these sites to collect data. They track the health of the population, look for dangerous parasites, and study the genetics of the group to see how far these pigs are traveling. Each massive catch is a victory for the farmer and a library of information for the people trying to solve this crisis on a larger scale. But while trapping provides a localized victory, the environmental damage these creatures leave behind is often permanent and far-reaching. Ecological warfare, the hidden damage. When a group of boars moves through a forest, they act like a fleet of heavy-duty rototillers. They dig deep into the earth to find snacks. But this constant churning does more than leave holes, because it actually changes the chemistry of the soil. By flipping the dirt over and over, they disrupt the delicate balance of nutrients and bury the seeds of native trees so deep they can never sprout. This prevents oak and hickory forests from growing back, meaning the woods you see today might be the last generation of their kind if the boars stay in charge. The destruction spills over into the water too. Boars love to wallow in creeks, ponds, and wetlands to keep cool since they cannot sweat. As they roll around in the mud, they kick up massive amounts of sediment that turns clear water into a cloudy mess. This suffocates fish and kills off the tiny insects that aquatic life needs to survive. The worst thing is that they leave behind dangerous bacteria like Escherichia coli. This pollution flows downstream, ruining the water for other animals and making it unsafe for any person who might use that stream for fishing or swimming. From another angle, native wildlife is also taking a massive hit. Many birds, like wild turkeys and quail, build their nests right on the ground. For a foraging boar, these nests are basically a free protein bar. They gobbled up eggs and chicks by the thousands, causing bird populations to collapse in areas where pigs are common. Even the larger animals are not safe from the competition either. During the fall, deer and bears rely on acorns and nuts to build up fat for the winter. A sounder of pigs can clean out a forest floor in days, leaving native species with nothing to eat. It is a one-sided fight for survival that the pigs are winning. Also, these animals even help other invasive species take over the land. They act as biological planting machines. As they travel dozens of miles, they carry the seeds of invasive weeds in their thick fur and through their digestive systems. They drop these seeds into the freshly plowed soil they just rooted up, creating the perfect nursery for weeds that choke out local plants. On top of the physical damage, they are walking reservoirs of disease. Boars carry over 30 different diseases and 40 kinds of parasites. Some of these, like pseudorabies and brucellosis, are not just a threat to other livestock. They can jump to family pets or even humans, making every interaction with these animals a serious health risk. Now, stopping this ecological rot requires more than just traps. It requires a controversial mix of policy, poison, and precision aerial strikes. What exactly can be done? The controversial solutions. One of the most creative and slightly dark ways people track these groups is by using a spy in the ranks. They call it a Judas pig. It occurs when wildlife officers capture a single boar, fit it with a GPS collar, and release it back into the wild. Because pigs are social animals, that lone boar will head straight for the nearest group. Once it joins a new sounder, hunters can track the signal on a map and find exactly where the whole family is hiding. It is a highly effective way to find pigs in thick brush, where humans cannot go. This method turns the pig's own social nature against it, allowing teams to remove entire groups that would have otherwise stayed invisible. When the territory is too big for foot patrols, the the battle moves to the sky. Aerial gunning involves using helicopters and professional marksmen to cover thousands of acres in a single afternoon. This is especially common in states like Texas, where the land is wide open. From a helicopter, you can spot and stop dozens of pigs that would have stayed hidden from a ground crew. Although it comes with a high price tag and requires a lot of coordination, it is fast and efficient. For many large-scale farmers, this is the only way to clear out massive numbers of animals before planting season begins. Then there is the talk of poison, which is easily the most debated topic in this fight. Scientists have developed a specific bait using sodium nitrite. This is a common food preservative, but in high doses, it is lethal to pigs because their bodies cannot process it the same way other animals do. The goal is to create a bait station that only a pig can open. Still, many people worry about the risk to other wildlife or pets if they happen to get into the bait. It is a tough balance between needing a powerful tool and keeping the rest of nature safe from accidental poisoning. You might think putting a price on their heads would help. However, history shows that bounties often make things worse. When a county offers money for every boar tail brought in, some people start treating the pigs like a crop. They might leave the females alone so they can keep having more piglets, ensuring a steady paycheck from the bounty. Instead of helping to wipe them out, it creates a weird incentive to keep them around. This is exactly why many experts prefer professional removal programs over public bounties. Some people wonder if we should let nature handle it by bringing back wolves or cougars. While these predators certainly eat pigs, they simply cannot keep up with the math. A single sounder can produce dozens of offspring a year, which is far faster than a pack of wolves could ever hunt them. The scale of the invasion is simply too large for natural predators to manage on their own. It is why the federal government is stepping in with millions of dollars. The USDA now runs a massive pilot program to coordinate efforts across state lines. They treat it like a slow-motion national emergency because they know that if they do not act now, the cost will only keep climbing. As we look to the future, the question isn't just how many we can catch, but whether we can ever truly coexist with an animal this resilient. The future of the feral frontier. We have reached a point where many experts are forced to admit a hard truth. In many parts of the world, getting rid of every single wild boar is no longer a realistic goal. Instead, we are entering an era of permanent management. It basically means the goal has shifted from total victory to a constant, high-stakes game of damage control. We are learning to live with a neighbor that is constantly trying to tear down the fence. And this shift represents a new normal, where the struggle is baked into the daily lives of anyone living near the edge of the woods. The conflict is moving into our backyards faster than we expected. From the suburbs of Berlin to the manicured golf courses of Houston, wild boars are finding that human neighborhoods are full of easy meals. They have discovered that trash cans and expensive landscaping are much easier to forage than roots in a dry forest. This urban encroachment is creating a new front in the war. When a 300-pound animal with tusks is wandering through a playground, the conversation changes from a farming issue to a public safety crisis. And the human factor is perhaps the most tense part of this situation. As boars get comfortable around houses, they lose their natural fear of people. It is definitely leading to terrifying backyard standoffs. What if humans are going out to walk their dogs or take out the trash and find themselves face to face with a massive, protective mother pig and her litter? It is a dangerous situation that has neighbors at each other's throats. In many areas, a divide has been formed. You have one group of people who think the pigs are fascinating and start leaving out corn or scraps to feed them. On the other side, you have families who are terrified for their children and pets. This feeding conflict makes management nearly impossible because the pigs learn to associate humans with an easy meal. When we think about it, we realize that dealing with this in a residential area is a legal and logistical mess. You cannot exactly call in a helicopter or use high-powered rifles when there are houses every 50 feet. Large traps are often too noisy or too big for a small suburban lot, and it leaves local officials with very few options to protect the public. The red tape and safety concerns mean these animals can often live and breed right under our noses for months before anyone can take action. It is a new kind of frontier where the old rules of hunting and trapping no longer apply. On the bright side, science is trying to provide a high-tech way out of this mess. Researchers are discussing a theoretical tool called a gene drive. By using CRISPR technology, they hope to create boars that can only have male offspring or produce sterile young. The idea is to let the population collapse from the inside out without firing a single shot. While this sounds like a perfect solution, it is also a controversial one. Altering the DNA of a wild animal is a permanent move that could have unpredictable effects on the rest of the food chain. We are essentially talking about using a genetic delete button on a species that has existed for millions of years. There is also the question of why we don't use this massive population to feed the world. While wild boar bacon is a popular idea, the reality is much more complicated. Wild hogs carry various parasites and diseases that make them a risk for large-scale food production. To turn these pests into a reliable meat source, we would need a massive overhaul of health regulations and processing plants. For now, the cost of making sure the meat is safe often outweighs the profit, leaving millions of pounds of protein out of the reach of our grocery stores. This is a global crisis that does not care about national borders. In Europe and Asia, boars migrate across country lines every day, bringing agricultural diseases with them. International cooperation is the only way to stay ahead of the curve. The insane numbers of hogs caught today are a symptom of a larger shift in our global ecosystem. Humans have changed the landscape, and the boars are simply the ones who have learned how to win in the world we built. The battle for the fields is far from over, but for the farmers standing over their traps today, the fight is personal. Have you ever seen the damage a wild boar sounder can do firsthand? Or do you think there's a better way to handle the population? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. For more content like this, tap on the next video on your screen.